and welcome to The Watchman. Well, it's hard to believe, but we are now just days away from deciding who will become the next president of the United States. No matter who wins, our next commander-in-chief will be taking office during an extremely perilous time for America, Israel, and the world. Our country is divided, and the world is on fire. That's why our team here at Christians United for Israel believes that it is a sacred duty for you to get out and vote. Now, you may think your vote can't make a difference and that things are beyond repair in America. Well, consider this. For generations, brave American soldiers have paid the ultimate price and laid down their lives in hellish places so that you would have the right to vote for the leaders of your choice. There are millions upon millions of people around the world who live under brutal dictatorships and would give anything to be free and have the right to vote. Yet each election cycle, millions of Christians stay home. We complain about the way the country is going, but when we have the chance to do something about it, we take a pass. I love the way CUFI's founder, Pastor John Hagee, put it. He said, "Listen to the echo coming from Valley Forge. Look at the American patriot stained with blood, hungry, barefoot, standing in the snow with his musket firmly grasped. He fought in those conditions, and now we are armed with the right to vote. Yet we sit at home on election day because the weather is bad." Folks, the Bible tells us that believers in Jesus need to be salt and light. We are not called to just sit at home and disengage. In the Gospel of Luke, Jesus says that to whom much is given, much is required. As Christians in America, we are truly blessed beyond measure. Think of the horrific persecution faced by your brothers and sisters in Christ in places like Iraq and Syria, where Christians are being hunted down and slaughtered by ISIS as we speak. Wouldn't they love a chance to vote and help determine their destinies? Christians in America have a unique opportunity to make a difference here and around the world. And that's exactly what we're doing at Christians United for Israel. In just 10 years, we have become America's largest pro-Israel organization with 3.2 million members activated and energized across the United States. We're standing up for America, for Israel, and for all that is good and true. You see the information there on your screen. Join our movement and become a member of CUFI. Folks, God is looking for a few good men and women for such a time as this. So join us and make sure you exercise your right to vote, because the next president needs to be ready to take on a committed, radical Islamic enemy that seeks the destruction of America and Israel. I recently spent time on one of the front lines of that fight, Israel's border with Syria. Middle East expert and analyst Yisrael Neiman joined us there to talk about his great new book, Hamas Jihad, and the radical ideology that drives the Islamic terrorists that are targeting you and me today. Take a look. And welcome back to The Watchman, only right here on TBN. Folks, we are at a UN lookout post on the Israeli side of the Golan Heights. We're overlooking Syria, scene of the world's bloodiest conflict. All of the world's worst actors have basically gathered here in one place, and they are driven by an ideology. And we are here today with an expert on that ideology, jihadist ideology. Yisrael Neiman is author of a great new book called Hamas Jihad. So let's start with the ideology, Israel, because we know Hamas is a terrorist organization with Jewish and American blood on its hands. What drives Hamas?
Their ideologies, the roots of their understanding, are the same as the Islamic State, also known as ISIS or ISIL, the Muslim Brotherhood worldwide, whether you take it all the way from the Far East or going to Pakistan and then sweeping out into Europe, throughout the Middle East, North Africa. It's the same ideology of jihadi Islamic world conquest as part of a decree that is to be followed, right? They're following the will of Allah to force everyone either to believe in Islam or bend the knee to Islam, such as the Dhimmi peoples, Jews and Christians who will live under the Charter of Omar as, call it, subject or subjugated. Second class isn't such a tremendous term, but second class communities.
Living
communities
life under Sharia law.
Under Sharia law in extremely difficult conditions.
And as you mentioned, Hamas came out of the Muslim Brotherhood, as did Al-Qaeda and all these movements. Talk a little bit about the Muslim Brotherhood, who was an organization in the West, unfortunately, that's looked at as maybe moderate in some Western circles. We can deal with these guys. They're our friends. Talk about the poisonous role the Muslim Brotherhood has played in pushing this jihadi ideology in the modern era.
The ideals of Hamas are the Muslim Brotherhood. It starts with al-Banna, and they point it out in the Covenant. It goes to Sayyid Qutb, who is the greatest of the jihadists or intellectuals, who himself is the father of 9/11. There's no doubt.
Yeah, explain that a little bit, Yisrael, if you don't mind. Sayyid Qutb, why he's such a pivotal figure in this jihadist movement, Al-Qaeda, ISIS. This is a guy who in the 1940s, 1950s, and spent some time in the United States, by the way, and was repulsed by what he saw. Talk about how he was such a pivotal player in this jihadist movement and in the birth of Hamas and their ideology.
What really makes him so dangerous to the West overall is he blends together what's called defensive jihad and offensive jihad. Defensive is when Islam goes on the warpath, the jihad, to capture all lands ever held by Islam. That's defensive. That's what the caliphate, the Islamic State, is speaking about at the moment.
Yeah, right over our shoulder.
Right over our shoulders out
Syria
there. Jabhat al-Nusra.
Yes.
However, he doesn't stop there and say, okay, the rules change into offensive jihad. He believes wherever there are believers, like had been the early creed or the first followers of Muhammad, wherever they are, that's the homeland, and that's where the jihad begins. In other words, it could be in Molenbeek.
Yeah.
In Belgium, it could be in Paris, it can be in New York. Back to Hamas, Hamas is part of this. Okay, just because they are perceived as not having succeeded, and they have not, because we won't let them, doesn't mean that their ideology is any less vicious. I urge everybody to read the Hamas Covenant. First of all, it's viciously anti-Semitic. It talks about the Jews being the enemy, not the Zionists. Zionism is seen as an offshoot of Jewish diabolical evil.
Yeah. What a key point. That this is not just an Israel thing for Hamas, Yisrael. It's a Jewish people thing. Jews, whether they're in Tel Aviv, Toronto, or Texas, it's Jews in general that Hamas is committed to eradicating in their own founding covenant, which you're telling us about.
Article 7, as we know, in the Hamas covenant, points out not only the Jews are the enemy, but that they should be killed. They're hiding behind, rocks and bushes and whatever else, and seek them out and kill them. And it's right there, okay? It's taken from a hadith, but the context is the Hamas covenant. We have to make it very, very clear that the Jews are seen as the main enemy by Hamas, not that they don't mention others, and I'll get to them in a moment. And Jewish perfidy, evil as they see it, right? And the Jews are being virtually completely evil, is that they're accused of trying to capture the world, financially, militarily, subterfuge, you name it, and that the Jewish state of Israel, is just one more tool in the tool chest. We know that Hamas, of course, focuses more on the Jews because it's more of the direct conflict here, but they make it very clear throughout the beginnings of the covenant that they are part of the world jihadi movement and that their sector is Israel, right? And everybody has their sector, and therefore there will be a sector that will deal with every place in the world, and eventually they unify and will capture it all. Where's the difference between Hamas and other Muslim Brotherhood organizations and the Islamic State is over tactics. Because what the Islamic State activists have said, al-Baghdadi, what they're demanding is that when there was this power vacuum in eastern Syria and western Iraq, that all the jihadi fighters should be there building this caliphate and from there expand outwards. As for where Hamas will go, I think it really has to do with the entire operation. It's not like we can just defeat Hamas or they'll go under. First of all, they have lots of support. They're not going to be removed from Gaza. Their greatest opposition there are the Islamic State operatives, not Fatah. They also have no problem wiping out anybody who will oppose them. And they've done it before. So I don't see them going anyplace. They have to be very much weak in that they don't pose any sort of threat.
Yisrael, thank you so much. Coming up, we're staying in northern Israel, not far from the Golan Heights, for a visit to an ancient Byzantine church where you'll get a fascinating look at the Jewish roots of your Christian faith. It's The Watchman, it's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN. Don't move.